Hey, good morning, and today we're going to be talking about Chapter 5. Welcome back to Child Psychology. In this chapter, this is our second unit, so this is where we're going to start talking about children after they're born. This chapter is about physical development. Remember, each unit has the three chapters: physical, biological development, cognitive development, and then the socio-emotional development. In this chapter, we're talking about physical development or biological development. Consequently, when we study these kinds of chapters about just the biological, I want you to keep in mind the cognitive and the socio-emotional as well, and how they are affected by physical development, because people treat one another differently based on their biology. People who are more traditionally attractive, or people who are taller or stronger or smaller or less traditionally attractive, are treated differently from others. And so for that reason, we want to understand in the psychology of children how physical development is affecting their psychology. How does it affect how they feel about themselves? How does it affect how they feel about the world around them? How does it affect their ability to learn, and their ability to grow, and their ability to develop psychologically? All of those different features and questions are inexorably linked. And so here we go. We're talking about infants in the first couple of years. We're talking about physical development. So as you read through this chapter, notice the patterns of growth and the similarities that we have, the things that we would be able to look at and say, this is what I would expect my child to be able to do, or this is what I would expect to see in the development of my child, those patterns of growth. I'll highlight two particular patterns. One is called cephalocaudal growth, a big word for another way of saying that we really develop from our heads to our tails. Cephalo is your head, caudus is your tail, and so we develop from head to tail. In other words, the brain, the mind, the head is going to get really the priority development, and everything else sort of connects with that. If you were to cut back on your food and you were starving, your body would waste away before your body would allow your brain to waste away. So that's the cephalocaudal. And the other is called proximo-distal. Proximo, the nearest, to distal, the furthest away. So we would develop from the core out. You develop your chest, then you develop your arms, then you develop your hands, then you develop your fingers, and that kind of development continues the rest of our life. Well, as long as we can continue to grow. Something else that this chapter will point out is what we call the dynamic systems view. So really, instead of it being your genes telling your body to grow and how to grow, and so you're just kind of the passive participant to growing, what is going to happen is you interact with the world around you, and that determines really how you develop. So the child who grows up in a house where they're carried around a lot is going to develop differently from the child who grows up in a house where they're plopped in the floor and they're never picked up, or I don't know, but never, but something like that. And so, for this question, you're going to see, as now let's shift our attention to now we're the observers of children. What is the difference between children? Children who grow up when they're carried a lot, they have different skills and abilities than the children who grow up and they're put in the floor and they just are able to, they explore on their own or whatever. neither really is an advantage, as we're going to see. There's just differences. Neither is a disadvantage. There are advantages and disadvantages of each way. Okay, so also we're going to see probably our first physical skills we'll call our reflexes, where something happens and the child reacts to it. A lot of our initial movements are reflexive like that. That leads to the development of what we'll call gross motor skills. They're not gross like gross like that, but the word gross really means a collection of a lot of things. So gross motor skills are motor skills that are dependent on lots of little movements or muscles. Walking is a gross motor skill because you have to hold your head up, and you have to hold your neck up, and you have to hold your back up, and you have to be able to hold yourself up, and then you have to move your legs and balance between those two legs. And it's kind of an interesting thing, almost a miracle that any of us actually are able to walk. Then we have fine motor skills. In the first couple of years, we don't have a whole lot of fine motor skills. First of all, if you look at your hand, or a baby's hand, babies don't have nice long fingers. They have little short, stubby fingers that are wide. So fine motor skills, it's hard for them to pick up things, or to button buttons, or to hold crayons or whatever. So there's not a lot of that. Most of this, though, is sort of the collaboration between sense and movement. And that's really where it starts, is we have to make this connection. I see something, I move across the room, but I have to move across the room in a certain way, a certain distance, in order to reach it, or I'll just knock it over. Then also, you would say, like picking something up. There's a difference between picking up my glasses and picking up this glass of water. Okay, so I see this object that I'm picking up, and I have to be able to use just the right amount of pressure, or I'm going to break it. Okay, or if it's like the glass of water, I have to use a certain amount of pressure, or I'll drop it, or it'll knock it over or something. So that's really where we're developing the sensory motor ability, perceptual development. A lot of our development is dependent on something called affordances. Affordances is a fancy way of saying something has potential for our growth, development, use. Okay, like for example, I use the phone, cell phone. It has a lot of affordances. Back when I was a little kid, the phone had one affordance, which is you communicate and you talk on it. Yeah, no, that's not true. You could always take it. Like I used to take the phone and whack my brother in the head with it. It was a pretty good weapon. They used to have cords, which was a weapon as well. Now they're not. In fact, a lot of people look at their phone and they go, talk on the phone? Communicate? That's not what a phone is for. It's to take pictures, or to text, or to look at the internet, or something like that. So there are a lot of affordances, a lot of potential uses for something. For a child, everything has affordances to learn. Not just to do stuff, but to learn. Yeah. So we want to make sure that we note that. Anyway, this connection between seeing stuff or sensing it, and then the perception, which is the meaning we make to it, the way we understand what it's there for, and then the movement piece, we connect all that. That's called I had to look at my notes. Perceptual motor coupling, and that's one of our first real cognitive abilities, is perceptual motor coupling, making that connection between two things. Anyway, that's pretty much the essence of this 5th chapter. I hope y'all are having a a great time and learning, and have a good week. Take care of yourselves.